My name is Dr. Harry Witchell, and this is an educational film, and the goal of this video is to show you how the subconscious mind can sometimes leak through body language what's really going on. That is, you embody your natural thoughts, and thoughts that you may have in your mind may interfere with one another. In this case, we're using an example from the 2010 UK elections, and we're looking at David Cameron. In 2010, for the first time in British history, there were national debates between the leaders of the different parties. So these were American-style debates which had been very common in the US, but in Britain, as of 2010, they hadn't occurred. I'm going to show you in a moment the third such debate, about a minute, the opening speech from David Cameron. And in that first minute, he makes one speech error. Now that speech error is a tiny little thing. It happens over the course of maybe half a second. He says the word, but makes a mistake, and then just shakes his head, and then moves on. But in fact, the word that he makes a mistake on, the flub, if you like, is absolutely essential for understanding where his head was at as he was making this particular statement.
Third, we've got to start making things again in this country. It's no policy to just borrow from the Chinese and buy goods made in China. Fourth, we've actually got to get value for money in our public services. I want good public services for everyone, and we can only do that if we save and stop the waste. I want good public services for everyone.
So what does making a tiny little mistake like this mean? Well, you know, there are all sorts of reasons why people can make a mistake when they're actually speaking. So they can be marshaling their thoughts, they can be distracted by something that's going on outside, there can be problems, they can be confused, angry, there are all sorts of different reasons. However, these kinds of speech errors can also imply that there are conflicting thoughts inside the person's minds. That is, one thought, maybe a conscious thought saying one thing and a subconscious thought saying another, and the person has the two thoughts interfere so that they can barely get the words out. This is the kind of the idea behind Freudian slips. That is, when two ideas interfere and the wrong thing is said rather than what's theoretically chosen or planned to be said.
I want good public services for everyone. I want good public services for everyone.
I want good public services for everyone.
So what Cameron had to do during this 1-minute speech, which was right at the beginning of the entire debate, so he had rehearsed it to death, he was fresh, he was ready to give the speech, there was no other talking that was going on in the Great Hall at the University of Birmingham. Everything was going in his favor. And of the 23 minutes of speaking that he did on this one particular debate, he only makes one speech error, this speech error. What he had to do was simply say that he wanted good public services. Now the problem was, as a Tory, the Tories, the Conservative Party, are notorious for making cuts. And not surprisingly, we now know in retrospect that they had the intention of making massive cuts in public services. But it is possible to say that you want good public services even if you plan on cutting the budget. You could want public services and cut the budget by hoping to reduce waste or to increase efficiency.
We've actually got to get value for money in our public services. I want good public services for everyone, and we can only do that if we save and stop the waste.
However, a normal person would probably associate budget cuts of public services with not necessarily fitting together with wanting good public services. This equivocation that we see in his speaking is based on this conflict between the two thoughts. On the one hand, he'd been advised to tell the public consciously and openly that he wanted good public services. But a normal person might think, well, if I'm cutting public services, is that the whole truth, telling them that I want good public services? It might help if you can imagine a little man in his head going, I want good public services. And then going, no, 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 I want to cut the budget of public services. The point is, in 2010, no one really knew. The electorate didn't know what Cameron's real plan was because he had never been in office. It's only in retrospect that we know that he had a plan to make these massive public spending cuts. Many people in the electorate would both expect and desire good public services. It's so important that, of course, he would have been advised that it was absolutely necessary that he say, "I want good public services," and that he say that unequivocally. Only it appears he couldn't say it unequivocally.
I want good public services for everyone.